The blast of a trumpet cuts through the morning air at the Tudor court. Its sound is clear and confident, heralding not just a royal arrival, but the presence of a man who, though little recorded, is impossible to ignore. The early 16th century English royal court was alive with the rhythms of ceremony. The shuffle of courtiers' feet, the rustle of silks, the low murmur of politics, and there among the king's musicians stood the man who provides the focus of today's episode, a trumpeter by the name of John Blanke. We do not know where Blanke was born, or the circumstances of his early life. We do not know the name his parents gave him. The fragmentary records of Tudor England tell us almost nothing of his origins, only that he was African and that by 1507 he was already in England, in the royal household of King Henry VII, blowing the trumpet for a king. How he arrived in England is a question that history leaves unanswered. Perhaps he came via the Iberian Peninsula, where black musicians had long served in noble courts. Perhaps he was brought by merchant ships from West Africa to Portugal or Spain, then on to England. There also remains a theory that he followed Catherine of Aragon from Spain when she was married to Henry VIII's brother, Arthur. But what is certain is this: in a world where most Africans in Europe were servants or enslaved, John Blanke was a paid professional in the king's court. His name first appears in the records as John Blanke, the Black Trumpeter. He is listed on the payroll of the Tudor court at a wage of 8 pence per day. That's about £24 in today's money. His role, to signal the king's arrival in public, to mark great feasts, or to play at tournaments and jousts. In 1511, Blanke's music echoed over one of the grandest events of Henry's reign, the 2-day Westminster tournament, held to celebrate the birth of a short-lived son, Prince Henry. We know Blanke's face too. In the Westminster tournament roll, an illuminated parchment nearly 60 feet long, the trumpeters ride in procession. 8 of them wear gold and crimson livery, their instruments gleaming in the painted light. Among them, one man's skin is a deep brown, his head wrapped in a turban-like hat, his gaze fixed ahead. It is the earliest known image of an identifiable black person in British history. That man is John Blanke. But Blanke was not only a musician, he was a man who knew his worth. In December 1507, the royal records preserve something remarkable, a petition written on his behalf to Henry VII's treasurer. In it, Blanke requests a raise in pay, citing the loss of a fellow trumpeter and the increased burden on those who remained. The request was granted, his wage doubled to 16 pence a day. Here, in ink on parchment, is a rare and telling moment, an African in Tudor England negotiating with the crown for better terms and winning. His life at court was more than ceremonial duty. Trumpeters were close to the pulse of power. They accompanied the king on progresses, sounded fanfares at state occasions, and were present for royal births, marriages, and deaths. They wore the royal livery, ate at the king's expense, and moved in the orbit of the highest nobility. In this world of intrigue and pageantry, Blanke carved out a space for himself. In 1512, Tudor records show that Blanke married. The royal wardrobe accounts show that Henry VIII himself provided a wedding gift, a gown of violet cloth trimmed with fine fabric for the bride, and for Blanke a bonnet, a hat, and a length of woolen cloth. The king's personal attention to the marriage of a court trumpeter speaks volumes about Blanke's standing in the household. But after that, the record falls silent. We do not know how long Blanke lived, nor where he died. His name vanishes from the accounts after 1512, leaving us with only fragments. But even in fragments, a picture emerges of a man who stood at the very heart of Tudor ceremony, whose music carried across the tilt yard and into the ears of kings. John Blanke's story is not the familiar narrative of bondage and resistance. It is the story of presence At a time when the idea of a black Englishman was unusual enough to be remarked upon, he was there, in the pay of the crown, riding in royal processions, recorded in both text and image. His life pushes against the easy assumption that the history of Africans in Britain begins with slavery. It reminds us that, even 500 years ago, black lives could be woven into the fabric of English society in ways both ordinary and extraordinary. We will never know the sound of his trumpet, the timbre of his playing, or the exact route by which he came to the court of the Tudors. But we know this: in the glittering and dangerous theatre of Tudor politics, John Blanke's fanfares were the soundtrack to royal life, and in the illuminated parchment of the Westminster Tournament Roll, his image rides forever, an African trumpeter, livery shining, instrument raised, announcing to the world that he was here.